Yes, sir.
Good evening, and welcome to the regular meeting of the Helotes City Council. It is July 23rd, 2015, and we are underway at 7 p.m. Before we get started on the agenda, I would like to request that if you have a cell phone or other electronic communication device, that you please turn it to off, silent, or vibrate, so it will not ring during the meeting. With that, we'll start the agenda. Tonight, the invocation will be given by Council Member Buys, and then we will follow that with the pledge to the American and Texas flag. So if you would stand for the invocation and pledges.
Excuse me. Let us give thanks for all the blessings, opportunities, and challenges you have given us. Guide us with your strength and wisdom so we can make the right decisions for all the citizens of Helotes. Thank you for all our city employees who work so hard to keep our city safe and running smoothly. As we head into the budget season, allow us the good judgment to keep our city viable for years to come. We also send out our condolences and prayers to the families of the 4 Marines and the Naval Petty Officer who lost their lives at the shooting in Tennessee. We also ask that the surviving wounded Marine and police officer from the same shooting make a full and complete recovery. For those that are not able to be with their family and loved ones because of military service, we pray for your quick and safe return. May we give our best always and be assured of your presence with us. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Next up, we have citizens to be heard. Grace, anybody sign up? No, sir. Okay, no one signed up to speak on any matter, so we will move right into the consent agenda. Tonight, the consent agenda consists of items 3 and 5, and typically in our meetings, those are items considered to be fairly routine by staff and by me, and they're intended to be approved in one action, one motion, and one second. However, if anyone has a question or a request to pull any of the items, we can address that now. So does anyone wish to ask a question or to pull an item from the consent agenda? Anyone? Okay, then I would ask for a motion and a second on consent agenda items 3 through 5, please.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion that we approve consent agenda items 3 through 5 as written.
We have a motion from Fredericks. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
A second from Massey. And again, that's a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 3 through 5. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Consent agenda items 3 through 5 are approved. Would also like to point out that for tonight's agenda, we have our city treasurer, Susan Wooten, up here on the dais. Susan, welcome.
Thank you.
And feel free to ask for recognition. Not more than I just gave you, but if you want to talk, ask to be recognized, and we'll. Oh, gosh. Anyway, that takes us to our individual items for consideration. And so that's item number 6. This is discussion and action on an ordinance authorizing the issuance and sale and delivery of approximately $4.4 million in aggregate principal amount of certificates of obligation for various projects proposed around the city. And so I would, I guess we'll do a presentation and then we'll ask for a motion to open for discussion and action. So we have our folks here. Ann, welcome. And if you would, please tell us who you are, who you represent, and then go for it. The floor is yours.
Yes, sir. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, my name is Ann Berger. I'm with First Southwest Company, and we serve the city of Helotes as your financial advisor. Before I begin, I'd also like to take an opportunity to introduce Noel Valdez, who is with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton, and he serves the city as your bond counsel. The item that we have for your consideration today are the certificates of obligation that we have been discussing. As part of our process, before we actually get to the sale results, I'd like to spend just a moment and talk about the rating process that we went through and the feedback that we got from the rating agencies. It was interesting. Mrs. Wooten did an excellent job in visiting and preparing the information, as did Mr. Schroeder. They provided us the questions in advance. They worked diligently to pull the information. There were a couple of new questions, but really I think it just built on the foundation from when you, not that long ago, had your rating reviewed by Standard & Poor's. I thought one of the things that the city did very well and resonated very well with Standard & Poor's is that although you were talking to them about an issuance of $4.4 million in certificates of obligation, we spent time talking about how the city had worked diligently to leverage those dollars, that in essence the city was deriving much more benefit from capital expenditures than just the $4.4 million. And so I thought that was very well received, and I'll certainly defer to either you and Mr. Schroeder and Ms. Wooten if y'all would like to go into more detail about that process. The rating agencies reaffirmed their rating and the stable outlook with a AA. And they had a couple of comments that I wanted to focus on because I think that these are very important. They talked about a very strong economy with access to a broad and diverse metropolitan statistical area. They talked about very strong budgetary flexibility with high available fund balance in fiscal year 2014 of 82% of operating expenditures. They talked about very strong liquidity with total government available cash of 38.3% of the total government fund expenditures and 2.3 times governmental debt service. They looked at your financial management policies. That was factored into this as well. And so when we see comments like this, when you look at the bidders, many of the bidders are from outside of the state of Texas. So they may not really know the city of Helotes in particular. They rely heavily on these rating reports, which we made sure we sent out. We got multiple requests for them. And when they are looking at you as a credit, they're not just comparing you to other cities in the San Antonio area. They are comparing you to cities nationally. And when we see rating reports where they talk about very strong economy, very strong flexibility, very strong liquidity, I believe that that's very much a compliment to you as a city and the management that you have and the policies and practices that you have put into place. The AA rating, when you look at the bids, we will talk about this a little bit more, but you had very close bids. And I think it was a reflection of the credit that you have, and also the fact that you're not necessarily in the market all the time. Helotes is a new name for investors. And so I think that all of those things culminated in the bid that we're going to be talking to you about today. Okay, so one of the things that we had talked about before, I know that the city has utilized a direct placement, and that was a very successful transaction when you did that. But one of the things that we have been seeing in this particular market, that there is not a lot of what we call bank qualified paper. And if you'll remember, that's when you issue 10 million or less in a calendar year. And so when we saw the combination of bank qualified, the structure that you had, and the AA credit, we said, you know what, we believe that this is going to get the best transaction if we do a competitive sale. We talked to our desk. We spent a lot of time working with our desk to confirm that. And I believe, hopefully, that the results that we show you today will indicate that that was the right decision. And Mr. Schroeder can tell you a little bit about this. It's a little bit hectic on the day that you get your bids. In the old day, we would be able to get the bids the day before, have plenty of time to work through it and take it to the council the next day. Well, the market is so volatile. Greece and China and Puerto Rico, all these things in the news. Investors will not hold it overnight. Underwriters will not hold it overnight anymore. So it makes for a pretty compressed time frame, but hopefully these results show the value of that process. So today we ended up getting 6 bids. Raymond James, FTN, and for those of you may not be familiar, FTN stands for First Tennessee, Robert Baird, City Securities Corp., Stifel Nicholas, and Samco Capital Markets. And only one of those firms is based in Texas, Samco. All of these other firms are based outside of Texas. They may have offices in Texas, but they're outside of Texas firms. The winning bid came in at a 3.09%. And I'm gonna talk about this a little bit more, but one of the things that struck us immediately when we were looking at this is the difference between your low bid and your high bid. The high bid was a 3.19. So you had 6 bidders who have less than 10 basis points or 0.1% between their bids. And what is interesting, this is done on an electronic platform, and Mr. Schroeder had the opportunity to watch it. So we see some bids come in. We saw one bidder, W. Baird, came in at 11.52, and then they pulled their bid. And then they came in at 11.55, and they pulled their bid. And then they came in at 11.58. That's reflective of the market changing, and they were refining their bid and refining their bid. But to have, and then the bulk of the bids came in just in the last minute to minute and a half. And so to see how close these bids are, I think that's really an indication of the fact that you got a market transaction. The other thing, we look at what we call the winning bid and the cover. So the first place bid was Raymond James. The second place was FTN. Well, look at that. We have to go to the third decimal place on the right to determine who the winning bidder is. You have a 3.093 and a 3.099. So you have less than 6 basis points not even 6 basis points, less than 1 basis point, about 0.6 of 1 basis point differential between your winning bid and your cover bid. One of the things that we noted is we try in our bid specifications to put in a lot of flexibility. We allow them to do term bonds or serial bonds because we don't know who's really on the other end, and these different firms potentially have very different customers for this. So you can see the blanks on the right. You do have debt service in those years, but what they elected to do is what we call term the bonds. So basically, you're gonna pay debt service in 2021, 22, 23, but they block it up in one principal amount in 23. So we'll show you a little bit more on the next page when we have the actual debt service. So what we wanted to do was a comparative analysis from when we were here at your May 8th meeting and tonight. When we were here at May 8th, we projected that the interest rate was going to be a 3.59%. And what I will show you is on the right-hand side, I know on the page before we had a 309. You select the winning bidder, but we knew that we had a very specific structure that the city wanted to make sure that you were not gonna go over those debt service numbers that we had provided on May 8th. But what we were able to do is because the interest rate was so much less than we had projected, we were able to pull a little bit more principal, a little bit on the front end, but mostly on the back end, which saved you interest costs and saved you interest rate. So by the time we resolve for it, the winning bid actually is a 3.08%. We had a little bit of difference in the par amount. 4.46 is what we had talked about that night. There was a reduction to that. The par amount is actually a 4.315, and we'll talk about that number in just a moment. We did the level optimization structure, 20 years. Your average annual debt service that night was about a $308,000 a year. That number has been reduced to about $271,000. The same max tax rate that we had shown that night, and then on the EDC debt service, it's about $34.4 thousand a year versus the $37,000, and a slight reduction to their minimum coverage. So when we look at the actual debt service, this is what it looks like. So even though you have term bonds, you do have your payment every single year. One of the reasons we wanted to show this to you is while you were authorizing $4.4 million, the bid that came in had what we call premium. And so if you look on the front part of it, you can see here that there are 3% what we call coupons to 3.5% coupons. But if you look at the yield, it's 0.45, 0.8, 0.1. In this particular market, when investors believe that interest rates are going to rise, when you have a higher coupon rate than you have a yield, that's what we call a defensive posture. And it means that they want to have a little bit of a premium on the front end so that if interest rates go up, they don't have to show even if they're gonna hold them to maturity, they would have to show the debt as a loss. So we allow them the ability to say what they want the coupon to be, and this was the winning coupon structure. So basically, we have only $4,315,000 in proceeds, but on the next page, we show you that you have a deposit to the total project, the number that we were solving for, the project fund deposit of the $4,367,883. And that's because the bid that they turned in had a premium of $147,000. And again, that's very common. That's what investors want to see in this market where everybody thinks that rates are going to be going up. So on the tax-supported debt, we went back, and I know these numbers are a little bit difficult to see, but this was the number that we were really solving for. And this number, when we were before you last time, it was about $366,000. And so bonds come in $5,000 increments. So we actually spent time with Mr. Schroeder and Ms. Wooten today really talking about where do we place that one bond or take that away, because we wanted to make sure that we were completely achieving the structure that the council had entrusted us to do. So we made some slight modifications on the front part of the amortization, slight reduction on some and slight increase on others because of the interest cost. We still have that $450,000 of the contribution from the EDC to help offset the debt service those first 3 years. And then on the next page, on the next page, this is the EDC, and it is the very same structure that we have been talking about. Again, it looks like they have slightly less than they were needing for their projects, but that's because we allocated premium to them as well. So basically, in summary, we recommend that the city accept the bid from the underwriter Raymond James and Associates. We'd like to, part of that rationale is that the winning bid interest rate is a 3.08 as compared to the 3.59 that you had seen before. And when we compare the total debt service that we have for you tonight versus the total debt service that we had when we were here before, it's about over $800,000. A little bit of that is the difference in the premium, but we also have premium proceeds, but there is a significant reduction to the overall interest. We believe another reason to accept this bid is that it was a very competitive process. You received 6 bids. Your high-low spread was 10 basis points, less than 10 basis points, and the difference between your winning bid and your cover bid was 0.58 basis points or less than 1%, actually less than 2/3 of 1%. We're happy to answer any questions, but before we do, we really want the council to know how much we appreciate all the work that Mr. Schroeder and Ms. Wooten did to help us and assist us through this process. We know that they have many things going on a day-to-day basis, but they always made time to be responsive and to take our calls and help us with the disclosure document, the legal documents, the rating agency response, and we are grateful and very appreciative of that. Want to make sure that we acknowledge the work that McCall did in all the legal documents, the review of the disclosure document. It was a very important part of the process. And finally, we would just like to say thank you so much. We are so appreciative of being your financial advisor and having an opportunity to work with you on this transaction.
Thank you, Ann. Just the way you described the last minutes of the auction, it reminded me of maybe a little bit like eBay. on a little larger scale, perhaps, but I didn't realize that the bids would come in like that right up to the end of the auction. It's
Yes,
interesting, and we appreciate all your hard work, your whole staff, and the way you worked with Susan and Rick and the city as a whole. We certainly appreciate it. I would like for you, I don't think I missed it in your presentation, but prior to the meeting, you were telling me that in all of your years in this business, you have never seen 6 bids come in at 10 basis points or less difference. And I would just like to stress to the council and to the citizens how important that is and how unusual it is. And it's because of the way it was all structured, and like you said, the way we're leveraging other dollars in with what we're doing and that type of thing. So, did you have anything else you wanted to say, just to talk about that one little part?
No, thank you, Mayor, for reminding me about that. I did mention to the mayor and to Mr. Schroeder before the meeting, as I was driving over here, I was thinking about it. I know that it's really close from a high-low spread, but I don't seem to recall any time in my career that I have seen competitive bids where you had 6 bidders and they were less than 10 basis points from the high-low. And so it's interesting when I think you step back and when we're in our position and you look to us for guidance on a negotiated direct placement or competitive sale, you know, we really try to make sure we're specializing it based on the particular credit, the security, the structure. And in my mind, that differential of less than 10 basis points was a validation that on this day, with your credit in this market, a competitive sale achieved the best result for the city. And I can stand before you this evening and say there is no doubt that you got a market bid.
Great, and I appreciate it. And I would also like to thank and commend the council throughout this process for listening so diligently to the information you guys provided and that was provided from the city, and making the decisions they made to bring us to this point. So, again, congratulations to council. That being said, we'll go ahead and if you want to stay there, Ann, that's fine. If you want to sit down, we'll just, if they have any questions, you can get back up. It's up to you.
Great, thank you, sir. And just
Okay.
real quickly, so, I'm sorry, Mayor, I forgot to 2 minor things. In the back, we do have all the detailed debt service schedules, if you'd like to look at those at some point, probably not right now, but later. But we also have the entire Standard & Poor's report as part of the attachments too, so you can have the opportunity to review that. And I would be remiss if I also didn't let you know my colleague Jorge Delgado was a tremendous help through this whole process, and just wanted to make sure that you know we have a great team. It's not just me. I have a wonderful team, and I can't do what I do without them.
Okay, great, thank you. Before we open discussion, Susan, did you have any comments that you wanted to make to council, just general comments, or?
No. I just want to say that I'm very happy with the way our bids came in there. I had a little concern going in, but we were not sure how we were going to hit the market, and I just couldn't be happier with the rate we got on this.
Okay, thanks a bunch. Rick, we'll hold you in case there's any questions.
I don't have anything to add.
Okay, that being said, again, we've read the basis of the item, so I would ask for a motion and a second to open discussion and put us in a position for action.
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we discuss and take action on item number 6.
We have a motion from Byes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Fredericks. So on this ordinance for the issuance of the C of Os, Bert, it's your motion, so you're first up on discussion and comments.
Well, I am really pleased to see this finally come to fruition, and plus, it's just an added bonus with this interest rate that we would get if we accept this, these C of Os. These projects that are going to be funded, they are needed. One of the problems when you have projects that you need to do is it takes so long to get everything in order to get it going and actually get it done. And I think if we wait any longer, that it doesn't do any good. I think it's going to work also because of our C of Os that I think that we have out are going to be paid off in 2017. Is that correct? Right. Okay. Also, with the EDC's contribution of $150,000 a year for the next 3 years, or is it start in 2016? Well, whatever it is, for those 3 years, that's going to help immensely.
It's on the schedule.
Yeah. Hopefully, we'll be able to recoup some of the impact fees from the water and sewer line that help pay for some of this. And if Susan says that she's very happy with the interest rate, I'm happy too. I just have a quick question for Susan. How do you feel these projected payments are going to affect our reserve fund?
Well, what we've done is kept
Can you lean into
Which
the
res-
mic just a
oh,
little?
yes, sorry.
Is that a fair question to ask?
Sure.
Or should I ask?
Mhm.
Okay.
And you're talking about our M and O reserve fund.
Yes.
Our debt reserve fund, we don't intend to have a reserve fund. We intend to wipe it out as close as we can every year of our interest and sinking. Therefore, I don't expect this to have any huge impact on our going forward M&O, knock on wood, because of the increase in our ad valorem values and the
Okay.
increases along those. And we have structured it so, thank you so much, Ann, that we pay off our debts before we hit the larger payments on this new debt. So I don't think it's going to have a terrible impact on us at all.
Well, then also our expanded ETJ with possible annexations and stuff like that, that should help also.
Right, and I haven't even considered any of that as, I just think standalone, we'd be all right.
Okay. All right. That's all I have.
Okay, Paul?
So I guess, again, in your opinion, without any annexations, without any increase forward from today, no adverse impact on debt payments or ability to make debt payments here on out?
With the assumption that our sales tax stays, with the assumption
Right.
there are no calamities, no catastrophes, I expect it to be okay, yes.
Okay. I just, the thing that kind of gives me, I understand these projects are worthy and needed. I do have a little reservation about the water and sewer line. And I know we're not supposed to look at this as a return on investment, but I'm certain businesses over there need to look at that. And I just don't see that project is going to have a lot of economic viability for the businesses in that area. And that's what kind of gives me a little reservation about issuing this, since that is the biggest part of this bond issuance. That I don't, in my opinion, we wouldn't expect to get really too much of impact fees or connect fees, whatever you call them, especially from the existing businesses that are over there. To me, they're small businesses. I don't think they can barely afford to do that, and there's a lot of certainly nonprofit entities over there that I think would struggle to pay those fees. So that's the only thing that's given me the heartburn, is the water and sewer. The other ones I totally agree are worthy and needed projects, but that one I'm still a little leery about.
Anything else? Cynthia?
Well, I couldn't disagree more with Councilmember Fredericks on the water and sewer line. One of the reasons there are just a few small businesses along that corridor is because there is no water and sewer. There's a lot of vacant lots there, and as far as return on investment, I think it will come eventually someday. We'll get a lot more sales tax when we have a lot more businesses there. Other than that, I am definitely for this. I feel very good about it, and so I just want to move forward.
Alex?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I did have one question, and first of all, I'm in favor of this. I understand the reservation and the opposite view as well. I've gone back and forth over that for myself in some time, but I think it's probably the right thing to do long term for the city. Whether now or later, now might be better than spending the even more later. But my question, I guess, is one of the things that we had talked about at the onset of this discussion was the interest in making, the intent in making this one that we could pay off sooner if necessary. And I understand that may or may not have had an impact on how the whole thing was structured. So my question really is, and I'm looking at page 5 of your presentation where it talks about the debt service and it talks about the rate and the yield and such like that. And I know that we talked about 3.09 something and 3.08 and of course that the rate column doesn't have either 09 or 08 in it, and I presume that we're talking about the overall end result where you get to the 3.08 or 9. So my question really is, based on the way this is structured, if we were down the road, say, come into all sorts of additional funds, and then we decide to designate those funds, say in year 5, 6, or 10, or 15, then we actually would be doing better because we would be paying them off at a time. I know it's a smaller interest, the loan balance would be smaller at that point. But we would actually be saving more because we're getting the better interest now versus down the road. Am I correct in that assumption?
Yes, sir, absolutely, you are correct. There is a call provision in there, an 8-year call provision with no penalty whatsoever. And yes, sir, this is the 3.08, and this interest assumes that you do not refinance it, you do not prepay it, you do not do any bond redemptions whatsoever. And so, yes, sir, to the extent that you do that, your cost of funds will decline and the overall interest that you pay will decrease.
Because I would hope as we move forward as a council and as budgets are prepared and approved, that we look to taking advantage of that situation which we intended when we went into this and actually pay it off sooner, get it taken care of. If we do annex and we come into that sort of thing, if we get additional funds from reimbursements from our expense by businesses tapping into the water and sewer, for example, that we actually do that. Because to me, that was one of the things we were probably paying a little more for, so we need to make sure that we utilize that when the case comes down the road. But that was all of my comment. Thank you. Thank you for your answer.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Bert, any follow?
May I comment on this?
Sure.
Noel can speak to this, but actually the impact fees that we are collecting from SAWS, and the pro rata refunds that we would be collecting from SAWS have to go back towards projects that are funded through this bond issuance or to repay the debt early, if I recall. So legally we have to do it that way, but he would be able to speak to it.
Oh, perfect.
Yes, I'll be happy to speak to that. Yeah, the
Yeah.
reimbursements that,
Just give us your name. and who
absolutely,
you
yes, sir,
represent.
Mayor. Noel Valdez with the law firm of McCall, Parkerson, Horn, serving as bond counsel, and our pleasure. Yes, the reimbursements that would come from the assessments from SAWS, what they become under federal tax law are replacement bond proceeds. And so there are two things that you can do with those replacement bond proceeds. One, you can utilize them for one of the projects for which you issued the certificates of obligation, or two, you can pay down debt. And as Ann mentioned, there is a call provision beginning February 1 to 2023 that you can call bonds in whole or in part, and you as a city designate what maturities you're going to call in. So you got the utmost flexibility with that call provision to determine for yourselves, with the advice obviously of Ann, as to what maturities would be to your benefit to call in at that particular time.
Thank you. And if I may, a follow-up, and you indicated that the bonds are generally issued in $5,000 increments, and so that's what you're talking about, is that we would be able to pick X number of $5,000 ones and and pick those as to ones we would pay off.
Yes, sir.
So we could hit a time period where we're looking at, say, in years 2028, 9, or 30, where that total debt service balloons up into the 600s, and we could try to pick some of those to kind of level it out some.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Good, thank you.
And to further clarify the way I understand this, when the water and sewer lines are completed, and assuming that projects are started and impact fees are received by SAWS and passed through to the city, we can actually use those, and the intent is to use those impact fees to make the annual principal and interest payments. And as that accumulates, if it comes in faster than it goes out, it will just continue to accumulate and give us more potential on year 9 or year 8, whenever it would be, to start paying those off and calling them in, right?
Yes, sir, that is
Okay,
correct.
great.
And it is interesting, I have another one of my clients just last week where they had 2 bond issues. One was currently callable and one wasn't callable for a couple of years. And they made the decision that they had some extra money, just very similar to what you're talking about, that had accumulated over the years. And so they did a bond redemption with one of them and a cash defeasance with the other. And we helped them structure it and put all of the documentation together. So it is very common, if over time you do end up with more revenues, to have the flexibility to do that.
We can only hope. That it?
That's it, thank you.
Bert, any follow-up?
On that same venue, who makes the decision? Does council make the decision on where the money goes?
Right.
Okay, that's,
I'm
Yes, sir.
assuming,
Just
right?
If you ever want to redeem bonds in advance of their state of maturity or to do a cash defeasance, it will take an authorizing document by the council in order to do that.
Right.
that's all I have.
Anything else? Paul, any follow-up?
No, sir. Thank you.
Cynthia?
No.
Alex, one last chance? Okay. No further discussion, then we will call the question on this, and a yes vote is to approve the ordinance and the issuance of the 4.4 million in certificates of obligation. So that being said, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries with 4 yes votes. Okay, well, that's exciting. Again, congratulations to everyone involved, the council, especially Rick and Susan for all the work they've done. I know they've had their heads together for quite some time, and to you guys, again, we can't tell you how much we appreciate the help, and especially the advice and the suggestions to help council through the deal. I think, just from my limited experience, like you're saying, we got a bang-up deal. Okay. Any further discussion? Any objections? I got obligation on my mind. Any objections to adjourning? If not, we are adjourned at 7:35. Hey, we're getting quicker and quicker.
Most efficient meetings far and away.
Thanks.
See you.
All right.
Good to see you as always.
No, not at all.
Well, we almost made it in 30 minutes.
Uh-huh.
So this is what we just
Oh,
did?
okay. Good. So y'all are gonna be connecting in.
Oh,
Good.
man, I'd like to be a
I'm glad it worked out for you
syndicate
guys.
member. That mean I'm mobbed up, huh? Oh, I'm doing here.
I don't know, we have that, build it and they'll come, but I don't know.
Done deal, man. We're trying. If we can ever get TxDOT to move a little bit on approving the plans, and TCEQ on the environmental stuff. It's an endless, slow process. But we'll get there. Thanks for coming. Man, I can't believe I just signed a note for $4.4 million. That's the biggest loan I've ever signed for.
There's more than,
Huh?
there's 3 copies, I believe.
Oh, really?
Bert, not yet.
I got it.